Welcome back to Comic Book History, episode number 77. You're probably thinking, okay, what characters talk about today? Last episode you talked about Charles Shaw, the comic writer who's currently writing Star Wars. This one focuses on basically one of the characters he wrote when he first came to Marvel back in 2013. She-Hulk. Yep, I'm talking about She-Hulk now. First appeared back in the Savage She-Hulk #1, which appeared in February 1980 by Stan Lee. And it was one other person working on the book. As far as I can tell, I've never discussed this character before like this. And John Buscema. And it did launch a very... I've read this volume. It is really good. It's just a book that surprisingly is not talked about very much when it comes to She-Hulk. Because the weird thing about this book is that, aside from the first issue, which is done by Stan Lee, which involved, get this, now how She-Hulk became who she is, aka Jennifer Walters. See, Jennifer Walters is Bruce Banner's cousin. Yeah, the thing about this part is it's not really delved into very much, aside from the fact they confirmed she's basically Hulk's cousin. Like, her last name is Walters. My only guess is the reason why that her last name is like that, and they've never delved into it deeply when it comes to her history. It's like, oh, Bruce Banner's got a cousin on the West Coast because she operated out of, I believe it was LA she operated out of, and she basically operated out of the West Coast throughout just her original book, because the thing is, after her initial book ended, she mostly operated in New York, and that's where she's operated since then, just New York City. Why New York City, you might ask? Because like every single Marvel superhero has to operate at some point in New York City. Mostly everybody currently does, except for characters like the Kamala Khan Miss Marvel, the Sam Alexander Nova, and I think there's a few others, but her, yeah. Now in her book, mostly put, she just basically is, she's a lawyer, and she, from what I could tell, she was a prosecutor at one point because she did investigate various cases. One of the issues she had in her book was that she was investigating gangster ties to, of all people, Tony Stark. Yes, Tony Stark connected to the mob, which proved to be nothing. Except just to acknowledge the fact that she exists in the Marvel Universe. And there are various characters popped up in this book, like her father, Sheriff Walters, who, after this book concluded, never appeared ever again in comics. I'm not kidding about that. The guy practically disappeared. Yes, Jen's own father. She also had a childhood friend named Zippy, who was a bit younger than she is, and they did briefly have a romantic relationship in the title itself. And here's the thing. When it comes to her outfit, mostly put her outfit just a torn dress. That's basically what she wore, and she would gradually go back between being She-Hulk and Jennifer Walters. That's mostly put basically what they did with the character. There have been a few instances where Jennifer Walters is usually stuck in the She-Hulk form. And the way it's written, from what I can tell a lot of the time, she actually likes being a She-Hulk form a lot more than her regular human form. That's just how she is. And also, they also had this thing with her where, throughout most of her history, except recently, where she basically has maintained control of both her She-Hulk form and as Jennifer Walters, where she maintained her intelligence. Bruce Banner has done it a couple times over the years, but not for a long period of time as She-Hulk has. And it was basically, if you remember, read the original Savage She-Hulk series, which is collected and trade in the Essential Savage She-Hulk Volume 1. It's mostly put a product of its time. Now, the thing with the book is that we also have, one of the times she actually is called to defend a mobster for, get this, killing his own bodyguard. And her father doesn't like this at all. So, because the fact that she dared to defend a guy who actually may have not actually committed this crime, her father disowned her. Yes, Jennifer Walters got disowned by her own father, who had nothing to do with him ever since then. Zippy, of course, by the end of the title, she had broken up with him. Yeah, and also that's the weird thing about She-Hulk is that she has a tendency to date men who are younger than she is. That's kind of the weird thing about it. And mostly put, with the exception of a guest appearance in Contest of Champions, she was mostly kept her own book for the first couple of years. And then once the book ended, she was briefly transitioned over to Fantastic Four for about a year with issue 267, and then she got moved over to the Avengers, where she's been prominently part of this group ever since then, even currently. By the late 80s, she finally got an ongoing series again. Well, here's the thing. Aside from appearing in the Avengers title, she also had a few Marvel comic graphic novel appearances, like The Aladdin Effect, Return of the Monmouth, which basically was the Living Pharaoh, and, of course, The Special She-Hulk, which was written and drawn by John Byrne. The thing about this issue is that the story of this one, when she was part of Fantastic Four, she started to date Wyatt Wagfoot, who at one point, they were actually engaged to be married. As far as I can tell currently, this relationship has barely been brought up in comics recently. Yeah, does anybody talk about the fact She-Hulk actually not only dated Wyatt Wagfoot, but the fact they were briefly engaged? Like, I don't remember when this actually happened, just like, oh yeah, they're engaged for some reason. Yeah, She-Hulk is engaged to Wyatt Wagfoot, who is basically a Native American character. Now you are thinking, a Native American character, is he basically like a stereotype Native American? No, not really. No, he's one of like 2 or 3 I can think of in the Marvel comic universe who is a Native American. One of the most noteworthy ones is Thunderbird from the X-Men. He's the only one I can think of who actually is currently actually refers to as Warbird. Actually, Thunderbird. He's the brother of the original one. I believe his name is James Prouster, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he's the only other Native American character I can think of in Marvel Comics. Yes. So, She-Hulk basically became, when she joined the Avengers in issue 220, which I believe this was during the trial of the Yellow Jacket storyline when she first joined the book. I think, if I remember correctly, reading about it, not at the time it came because I wasn't alive at this point, I believe the book was written by Steve Eckhart, so maybe Eckhart had added to the series, which she was still part of up until, yeah, she was basically part of it a lot of the time. And then when she eventually got her own solo book, it became, now her solo book mostly, this is one thing that this book introduced a lot of stuff about the character that is still in effect with this character mostly to this very day. One of the things they introduced in this book is her fourth wall breaking ability, which a lot of writers do remember this, but not everybody does. As a matter of fact, the recent one did not have breaking the fourth wall at any point in time I can think of. Her book lasted for 60 issues, and I believe it had also a miniseries alongside of it. John Byrne wrote and drew a good chunk of the series. There's even one issue of the series where she ended up fighting she basically is fighting the Black Talon, who's trying to resurrect a group of dead X-Men villains. Like characters like, I think one of them was like Jack Frost. If you think Jack Frost, a villain in the Marvel Comics universe, technically this guy was an enemy of Cyclops when he first showed up in a backup feature for the X-Men. This backup feature, if you was a read X-Men, the classic stuff, not the one that Chris Claremont came up with. Yeah, there was a brief backup feature in the book that mostly explored stuff related to the X-Men. Prior to events of X number 1. And mostly it explored in at least 2 or 3 part stories, 2 or 3 issue stories, where they would explore of how these characters first joined the X-Men. First was Cyclops, then Iceman, then it was actually a switch around because Angel was the last one before Jean showed up, and that was actually a publication change because originally Beast was supposed to be next, and they switched to Angel for some reason because you read the book, like they just introduced Iceman to the group, and then we have Beast who's automatically a member, and there's no explanation of exactly why. From what I heard, it was a publication change, but that's here and over there. They also had, I believe it was the Black Rook at the Hellfire Club. He got briefly resurrected here as a freaking zombie. Yes, because Black Talon is a necromancer. So he resurrects a group of dead X-Men villains where She-Hulk fights him with Howard the Duck making a guest appearance. Yeah, Howard the Duck occasionally appeared in the Sensational She-Hulk book. Yeah, he even repaid the favor when he showed up at the end of Charles Soule's run. And she's also showed up in his book too. So, When she defeated all these zombies, she proceeded to put salt in all their mouths and sewed their mouths shut and buried them so they could never be used again, despite the fact that the Black Rook did come back from Narosha just for the first 2 parts, and he was never seen again. Yeah, that's kind of a weird thing about him. And despite the fact she was also part of the Avengers, she still had this book. And then once the book ended, she basically would just appear sporadically afterwards for like over a decade, pop up here and there, like a live guest star appearances for She-Hulk. And then by the late 90s, she basically was added part of the John Ostrander run for Heroes for Hire. Here's a little fun thing about this book. This book was actually one of 2 books that John Ostrander actually one of 3 books he ever did for Marvel. Because he's noteworthy working a lot of DC books and Dark Horse. The other 2 books he worked on were Quicksilver, and the other one was The Punisher, where he joins the mob. Yeah, it was a very brief run. So, with this particular book, basically, She-Hulk starts a relationship with another guy, this time being Luke Cage. Yeah, she briefly did Luke Cage in this book. And this was probably by far the only relationship she's ever been in that's actually been referenced since then. Yes. After the book, now the book itself was this version of Heroes for Hire was financed by Namor. And you're thinking, Namor? That's interesting. Yeah, it was part of a company who was backing the Heroes for Hire. Which at the time, from what I've read, this was mostly put a stand-in for the Avengers. But once the Avengers came back, the Heroes for Hire pretty much were got rid of. And the book was canceled presumably due to low sales. And here's the thing, the very first issue of that particular series, the UFOs broke out of this prison known as the Vault. Where when they broke out, they pretty much destroyed the entire prison. And that was last. It's all the Vault. The Vault was introduced back in a Marvel graphic novel called Avengers the Vault. Yeah, the Vault is one of the many superhuman prisons in the Marvel comic universe. Currently, it's never been rebuilt. It just was destroyed, but it was never built ever again. I believe the only one so active is the Raft. Yes. So, and She-Hulk was practically part of this group from the first issue, and she stayed until like pretty much the last issue, where it implied that she and Luke Cage would probably become a regular couple afterwards. But no, they apparently broke up off screen, and this relationship was mentioned a couple times by Jessica Jones, but that's simply it. But after this book concluded, she didn't do very much for the next several years until in 2004, which is the year I started reading comics. She got another solo book, this time done by Dan Slott, which I have reviewed this run. This was a brief run, lasted for 12 issues, and then the book got canceled, and it was relaunched #1. I was wondering why it got canceled. Low sales. And pretty much this run had 2 writers with the relaunch of She-Hulk. Last 30 issues, 32 writers. Well, first you had Dan Slott do the book for the first 21 issues, and then the last 17 issues done by Peter David, who the book got ended due to stuff related to Jeff Loeb's Hulk. Yes. Now, in this book, mostly, they will acknowledge some occasional fourth wall break in the book, not as much as, let's say, She-Hulk. Also in the book, we also had John Jameson, the son of J. Jonah Jameson Jr., where these 2 appear in the book. John Jameson was actually briefly married to the She-Hulk. I'd say briefly married because this relationship kind of started back at, this was implied that when they first went back in this Savage She-Hulk title, when he was basically when he was like the Star Wolf. Actually, it was like Star God. Yes. Though it was later retconned. I think David did this. I'm not sure who did it. Where apparently the whole relationship between She-Hulk and John Jameson was a manipulation. Anybody thinking, a manipulation? Who the heck manipulated these 2 to become a couple? Star Fox. And you're thinking, the 64 character? No. Not that Star Fox. Thanos' brother, Star Fox. Yes, Thanos' brother. I mean, people know who Thanos is. People don't know the fact he has a freaking brother named freaking Star Fox. His real name is Arrows, but Star Fox is his hero name. He apparently is one of like 3 or 4 superheroes who's got pheromone power. Yes, pheromone. Actually, he's currently one of 3 I can think of. Because there 2 being Daken, and Spider-Woman, who got pheromone powers. So Star Fox used his own pheromone power to manipulate She-Hulk to fall in love with John Jameson and get married. And we even had one point where She-Hulk was briefly fighting one of the Spider Slayers in the book because it's John Jameson. He loves freaking Spider Slayers. Now, any Spider Slayer, the Mark Wood Spider Slayer, which apparently Jameson kept in his attic for some reason. I have no idea why, but I thought this was kind of hilarious. He kind of retold this to be a She-Hulk Slayer, which I thought was so funny. Yep. Though when the book ended in 2008, it was canceled at the time due to a lot of books getting canceled due to Secret Invasion. Yes, because that's Marvel's thing. Whenever in the title, it did wrap the conclusion of a big epic crossover. Though also in the book, there was also a Skrull actually be a supporting character in the book. Yes, who was a good Skrull, who was on the run because of events of Secret Invasion. Now, in the pages of Hulk, she actually met the Red Hulk, and she got beaten by him. So, her response? Gather up all the female superheroes just to beat the crap out of him. Because she got embarrassed by Red Hulk. Yes. And then we had the Red She-Hulk show up in the book like not long after the Lady Liberators beat the crap out of the Red Hulk. As payback for daring to defeat her in combat. Yes, and then there was one brief point, I thought this was kind of weird, where apparently, like, we had Red She-Hulk strangle She-Hulk, and then we have another She-Hulk pop up, this of course being Lyra, and you're probably thinking, who is this She-Hulk? And by the way, she's got green skin, just like the original She-Hulk, and she did briefly have her own couple solo titles, first being I think it was the all-new Savage She-Hulk with a Dark Reign tie-in. The thing about Lyra is, she's a daughter of the Hulk. And you're thinking, how the heck is that possible? It is by far one of the most weirdest ways I have ever heard of, basically a character being created in comics. Yes, so Thundera, her beautiful mother, made out with the Hulk, stole his saliva, and apparently used that to create a baby. No joke, that is seriously true about Lyra. That is how she was conceived. Saliva. People are thinking, that's gross to discuss, to bring up in a video. Well, it's true because it was brought up in comics. So don't blame me for that. Blame Marvel Comics for that stupid idea to create Lyra. She, of course, can get her own video sometime, but let's just talk about Jennifer Walters. Though, of course, she come back, and there was also a Red She-Hulk who popped up, who later turned... The Red She-Hulk herself turned to be Betty Ross. Lyra got along a lot better with Jennifer, who, I believe it was, she did also have a brief backup feature in Incredible Hulk. Later on, she had a team-up miniseries known as She-Hulks, where Jennifer basically was very close to Jennifer due to the fact that she grew up in a society where the women are more dominant than the men. Now, these women are known as the Femizons. Yes, where the women are top of the food chain, and the men are basically their slaves. That is literally how this worked. That's how this society worked. And apparently, Thunder liked Hulk for some reason, despite the fact she recently formed a relationship with Hyperion. Yes, the Hyperion that John Peckman created. No, I'm not kidding about that. Seriously, it happened. Trying to think here. Well, she didn't do very much aside from that miniseries for the next few years that I could think of, though she did briefly, she did get another ongoing series in 2014, lasted 12 issues, that might all show, which I have done a review for, it's really good. She, after Secret Wars, became part of the FF, the Future Foundation, where she was member of the team. Here's the weird thing about this roster for this FF book by Matt Fraction. You see, it was led by the Scott Lang Ant-Man, and its members were She-Hulk, Medusa, and Miss Thing. So it's almost like that. Basically, you had Scott Lang basically with like 3 women. But the thing is, one was married, and he was dating one of the other 2 women, and that'd be Miss Thing, who basically she became part of the group because of pure randomness. Yes. So she was part of this group for pretty much this entire run. And then once this run wrapped up, let's see, this was back, I think it was like 2016, I think it was. She was also, despite being featured in this book, she was also featured in the Patsy Walker, aka Hellcat series briefly as a recurring character. And she also popped up in Howard the Duck as a recurring character. Because why the heck not? Because Howard the Duck is super popular. I love Howard the Duck. And plus also, that was a gateway lead to that book. I'm trying to think, what else was it? Let me think here. Let's see. I think it was like by the time the Feature Foundation ended, which was, I believe, was in 2016, I think it was. Around the time that ended, then we also had, after Secret War, aside for appearing in Feature Foundation and being a recurring character in Patsy Walker Hellcat and Howard the Duck, she also appeared in A-Force. Yep, she appeared in the entire 8-issue volume, which was ended because of Civil War II. Excuse me, which she's part of the start of it, where she, along with a group of superheroes, fought frickin' Thanos. And then she got beaten by Thanos and knocked into a coma for a little while. And then when she got out, she apparently got bigger than she usually is, and her skin changed to gray. And then she got a soul title simply called Hulk, where also in the book, a lot of the time she basically, apparently it hurt whenever she transformed into the Hulk. Well, She-Hulk actually, and she was a lot more muscular at this point. Aside appearing in this book, she also briefly made a guest appearance in Daredevil, because why not? Charles Shaw wrote her, and from what I can tell, he had a great time writing the book, and so he figured, though, why not pop up in the book and have it basically tie in motion to the Hulk/She-Hulk book. Eventually, the book became She-Hulk when it was launched as Hulk Volume 4, and then after, I think it was like about 12 issues, I think it was, they retitled the She-Hulk, where it briefly returned to a triple-digit numbering. It was done by Marika Tamakagi, which I think she did a good job with the book. And in that last story arc, which is known as She-Hulk, Jennifer Walters Must Die, where she met a fan of hers, and she also ran into the Leader. Yes, the Leader. Where he also drained her of some of the gamma radiation because she had too much in her body, and she kind of returned back to normal, mostly. But apparently Jason decided to slightly ignore this, though she still was green. She's still green, but apparently he ignored some of the other stuff that happened in the book. I'm not really sure why. Because it seemed like, though, like right now, she's in the Avengers title, and she's... Yeah, apparently Jason did something really weird with her. You're thinking, what's the weird thing he did with her? He put her relationship with Thor, which to me makes no freaking sense at all, because this relationship just popped up out of nowhere. It's like, oh, Thor just goes out with Jennifer Walters and pretty much like, oh, you like you like the other one, because apparently it's two personalities again, and apparently he's dating her for some reason. And in the Thor book, which Jason Aaron was still writing at the time, which she hooked him a guest appearance, it was still very implied that Ra Solomon had a thing for Hulk, and like when she showed up Avengers Mountain, where apparently they had this thing where like you had Thor and She-Hulk doing a training session, which is code word for these two having sex. I am not kidding about that. Because based upon how it was described in the book, yeah, these two have frickin' sex. And I'm thinking like, okay, Jason, I get the fact you love Thor, but why the heck did you hook him up with frickin' She-Hulk? Yeah, this made no frickin' sense at all. And currently, we have a storyline involving her called World War She-Hulk. Was that return Ray emerges as another character? Yeah. I'm trying to think here. Oh yeah, almost forgot. There's also a story arc in the Avengers Volume 3 where known as the Search She-Hulk, which had her briefly rejoin the Avengers at that point before she joined it recently. But it was announced recently, and I saw in the January solicits, which were released, I think, like a week or two ago, where She-Hulk is getting a title again. Hooray! I love the fact she's getting a title again. And from what I can tell by the cover, it looks like one of the old Sensational She-Hulk covers, they basically made a modern day update to, which I think was great. Yeah, I think it was really good. I'm trying to think what else though. That's pretty much it when it comes to She-Hulk. Great character. She's had some great titles. Now you might think, okay, is there any like trade paperbacks to this character? Yes, yes, there is. You have the Essential She-Hulk book, so Savage She-Hulk, which collects the entire run. You have the two Marvel Masterworks, Savage She-Hulk. You have, let's see, there's a couple trades that collect Sensational She-Hulk. The first one being the Sensational She-Hulk, which collect the first 8 issues. Then you have Sensational She-Hulk by John Byrne Volume 1, which collected that run again, plus Markham vs. 18. You have Howard the Duck Complete Collection, Death's Head Volume 2, Death's Head, Freelance Becoming Agent, Sensational She-Hulk by John Byrne, The Return, which is the rest of his run. An omnibus book, which collected the entire John Byrne run, The Search for She-Hulk, pretty much the entire run for She-Hulk from 04 to 05, that run, which also had 2 complete collections, which I own one of them, the one done by Dan Slott. There's an omnibus edition for that. There is Savage She-Hulk, which is the second volume for the book. You had Fall of Hulk, Savage She-Hulks, which collected Fall of Hulk, Savage She-Hulks 1 through 3, and material from 60605 for Incredible Hulk. You have the She-Hulks miniseries, which collected that miniseries. You had the Charles Show run, which was collected initially in 2 trades, which was later combined into 1 trade. And then you have the most recent book by Mark Tamakagi. And that's it. So I say a lot of She-Hulk stuff has been collected in trade, but not everything. Yes. But yeah, that's pretty much it to discuss here when it comes to She-Hulk. Great character. Highly recommend checking out her stuff. And, well, like, just check out her trade. You'll be enjoying a lot of really good work by a lot of good writers. Because she's never had necessarily a bad writer I can think of. No, not really. I mean, aside from the fourth wall break-ins that becomes She-Hulk, they established also some humor that was established in the book, because Savage She-Hulk was a very serious book. Savage She-Hulk was basically a humorous book, which Dan Slott maintained that humor, and so did apparently Peter David. Even Charles Shaw maintained humor, not Margaret Tamakagi, who decided to go back to the serious stuff. Yeah, sometimes she gets serious, but I like the humor as a lot better when it comes to She-Hulk, because she's more good with humor than she is with serious stuff. That's just my opinion, anyways. But yeah, that's a particular review. Oh, before I end this here, yes, I do know about there's a few things else before I end here that people might bring this up here. Let's see, what was it? Oh yes, I think it was like Frank Miller mentioned this, that he mistakenly called She-Hulk a porn star. Yes, seriously. And there was a porn parody of She-Hulk played by the late Chyna. Yes, the female wrestler Chyna played her in a porn parody. And I've seen pictures of, I think it was, the actress name is Brenda something. It was, because there's pictures online of her for a live action TV series featuring her that didn't go anywhere. No, it wasn't. Yeah, for some reason it was never made. And she's popped up on a few other TV shows. Popped up Fantastic Four, the Incredible Hulk animated series, which was really good, by the way. Popped up for like 1 episode of World's Greatest Heroes, Fantastic Four. Hulk Agent Smash, regular character in that one. 1 episode of Superhero Squad show, voiced by Katie Stackhoff. Let's see, she also appeared in Ultimate Spider-Man. And of course, you also have the She-Hulk Disney Plus show. Yes, where we're going to see return of Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk, first time since Avengers Endgame. And Tim Roth as the Abomination, which he just previously played him in Shang-Chi. Which should be interesting. Yeah. But yeah, that's going to be it. So, next video is going to be Shaman King. Okay, next video. Bye.